Welcome back. So in this video we're going to talk about the Pathfinder and we're going to talk about the shape builder tool. So rather than just drawing simple shapes, we can use our software to create shapes and build shapes. Okay. So rather than just drawing outlines, if we wanted to draw something, we can draw it by using a combination of shapes. Now whether that could be through using the basic shapes or using shapes that we've created with our pen tool, like so. So if I was to put those three shapes together, they're all separate different shapes. So I'm going to fill them all. In fact, I'm just going to draw a little bit better shape there. I'll just draw a bean sort of shape. It's not the best shape in the world, but it'll do. So we're just going to fill those. So let's give different colours. So we'll have green, we'll have orange, and we'll have, let's go with blue. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of the outline because it's quite confusing with all the lines. So because they've all got the same outline, I can select them all and just check no outline. So you'll now see we've got three different shapes. We've got this bean sort of shape, we've got this square shape, and we've got this circle. Now, as you can see, they're all in different orders. So the green one is at the top, and the orange one is at the bottom. So if I can virtually hide it behind all the other two. Now the reason for this is because Illustrator works on what you created first is at the bottom, on a stacking order. And we can see this a bit more closely when we open up the layers. So you'll see this is our layers palette, and we're going to talk about layers a little bit more in detail because it's something you'll need to understand and know how to use it. And as you can see, there's a little thumbnail here of the collection of shapes that we've got that tells us it's layer 1. We have one layer by default, so this is the one we're going to be looking at. Now if I want to change the order, so if I want the square to be at the top, I can go to Object, Transform, actually not Arrange, Bring to Front, and it'll bring it to the front. I can actually say Object, Arrange, Send Backward, and it will go through the order. So it'll go behind the green one, and then if I do that again, Object, Arrange, Send Backward, it'll go behind that one as well. So you can send it up and down between the different elements we draw by using the Object, Arrange method. We can also see that in here. So if I was to unpack this layer, you see the three different objects here. So if I do that again, so if I go Object, Arrange, Bring Forward, can you see that the orange is now jumped up above the ellipse? And if I go Object, Arrange, Bring Forward, it now moves it to the top. But wait, there's another way as well. Once you get your hang around layers and understanding what you're working with, and you can imagine, you know, when you're drawing something, you're not just drawing three shapes. You're not just drawing a square, a circle, and a bean shape. You're drawing a lot more. So you're going to have hundreds of these things. So sometimes it can be easier to just do the Object, Arrange, Send Backwards, Send Forward. So you might find it's easy to do that once you get going. I sometimes do that, and I just hit the Control and that key until I get it where I want it. So it can be a little bit easier to do that. But what I'll show you is that you can actually move it using this little square here. So if I grab hold of that and drag that down, it moves it down. If I drag it down again, it's probably not going to let me drag it down to below that one. I can also do this and position them where I want. So you can use these layer palettes to reorganize your artwork, your illustration work. However, I would refrain from doing what I've just done there and unpacking things, because you'll end up with hundreds, and it'd be really confusing to see. It's quite easy to see when you've just got a few simple shapes and they're all different colours, but when you've got little lines, colours that are very similar, these little thumbnails are not going to be very easy to see. You're not going to be able to understand them, and they won't be labelled anything that you recognise either. So what I would recommend is you keeping things on what I call layers. So just basic layers, and you can rename these. So let's just add a couple more layers. So I'm now going to rename this one. I'm going to call this one square, and I'm going to rename this one circle, and I'm going to rename this one bean. Now currently these aren't on those layers, they're all on this layer, because if I turn this off they all disappear. If I turn these off, they can still see them because they're all on this layer. But what I can do is I can select the circle, and this indicates that it's the selected element, and I can drag it up to the circle layer. So I grab that and drag that up there, and now the circle is now on this layer. And if I grab all of the bean and I drag it up to the bean layer, it's now on this layer. So now I've got complete control, and I can move these up and down using the layers. So really useful way of being able to manipulate objects that you've got on your artboard. So now we understand layers a little bit more. Let's look at how we can start combining shapes together. So we're going to close this palette down because we're not going to really use it that much while we're doing this next bit. A lot of the functions in Illustrator work across layers as well, so you don't have to have things on the same layer to be able to do things with them. It sees all layers together, so don't worry about putting things on separate layers. It doesn't stop them from being able to be manipulated, unless you lock them, of course. So the one thing I haven't shown you is that you can actually lock a layer. So I could click on that, and that would mean that I can't move that square anywhere. I can move the others, but I can't move that square because it's locked. So that's a little tip there. So what we're going to look at now, we're going to look at the Pathfinder tool and the Shape Builder tool. And you'll use these a lot. I use the Pathfinder all the time. So the Pathfinder is a way of being able to join things together or use it to create things. So let's just move this bean out of the way, because it'll make much more sense when we use the Pathfinder. So let's just delete these, and we'll start from scratch. So the Pathfinder, if we draw a couple of shapes like we had before, and I'm going to just change their colours so that we can see them. The Pathfinder is a way of being able to change, control, manipulate shapes, take bits away. You'll see as we go what it does. And if you haven't got it on view in your palettes, I think mine's down here. I think that's the Pathfinder. You can go to Window and then go down to where it says Pathfinder. I'll just go this there, there. So I'm just open my Pathfinder window here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through how all the different modes work. So select them both. So you have to select both shapes to make the Pathfinder work, because you're combining things. It's like a Boolean type thing, a mathematical thing. So I'm going to select both together, and then I'm going to click on the first one, which is Unite. So if you click that, it unites them. So they're now no longer a circle and a square. They are a united shape. So I'm just going to Control Z that to undo it. You'll notice that it changed to red. The square turned to red because the red is in the foreground. So the red circle is the dominant element, so it made the square the same colour as the circle when it united them. Select them again. This time I'm going to click on minus front. I call it punch. So you're basically punching the foreground shape out of the shape below, and it punches that hole. Okay. The third one is intersect, and as you can probably gather, what's going to happen is it's going to leave this bit here. So everything's going to go except this bit. There we go. Control Z again. And then the final one is exclude. And I don't really use this one. I've never really used this one very much at all. And you just end up with the bit in the middle that's a hole, so you can see there's a hole there. But like I said, I don't really use that very often. You can actually keep them live. So if I was to unite them like that, as you can see, it's one shape. And if I go to preview, which is, I know it's in view, and I go to outline, you'll see that there's nothing here. It is just one shape. So I'm just going to go back to preview. Now I can do it a way in which stops it from becoming, it'll look the same, but it means it's still editable. So if I hold Alt down while I do my unite, you'll notice that although it still looks the same, you'll notice that the shapes are still there. So if I go to view outline, you'll see there's still the circle. So I go back to preview. So when I move them around, they move together, just like they would do if they were united. I can also double click and move this circle around. So by double clicking, I can change the position of that unite function. So if I don't get it quite right, I can adjust it. Again, it's not something I use a lot, because it's pretty obvious sometimes when I want to do a Pathfinder function that is what I want to happen. So it's pretty much set when I do it. It's not usually something I'll adjust very much, but it's just another thing for you to remember. So let's go back to how we had it before. Let's just undo Control Z until we get back to this blue in this. There we go. So back to how we were before. So those are the main basic ones. Now there are some other ones, and this one you don't need to worry about these too much for the time being, but certainly divide. And what divide does is it retains everything. So if I click on divide, what it'll do is it'll retain every single part. So this part, this part, this part will be retained. Nothing's been punched out, nothing's been got rid of. Everything's still there, but they're now separate shapes because you've divided it up. So if I go to Object Ungroup, you'll see that we've got a shape here, and a shape there. So it's divided. It's almost cut it up a bit like using the knife tool. And it's something that I will use quite often when I'm building something, whether it be logos or whatever it might be. The unite tool is something that I would use. Sorry, the divide tool is something I use a lot. But remember, when you do unite it, you can't move them about until you ungroup it. You've got to ungroup it. Otherwise, you won't be able to move them about. Okay. Let's go back. So that's the Pathfinder tool, or Pathfinder function. Like I say again, anything you want to try and find, it's under the window menu. You just go down, find it. Any of your tools that are on here are in this window, so you can always find things. So the other thing I want to show you is the shape builder tool, and the shape builder tool is a way of combining shapes together to create things, a bit like in the same way the Pathfinder works, but in a tool rather than a function. So let's just create some more shapes. So let's add a star to the equation. That's that funky 10-pointed, 11-pointed star we before. Let's change its colour. Let's go for orange. And let's add another circle or something like that. And we'll name green. Okay, so we've got these shapes. Now what we can do with our shape build is we can start to use these sort of functions, but in a more sort of like drawing manner. So this shape builder tool here, as you can see, it's going to draw like a cloud. Okay, so basically once you've selected all your shapes and you want to join them together, I can just click drag the bits that I want it to keep. So say for example I want these bits to be all one shape, it will join them all together. And then if I press Alt, but I don't want this part of the shape, and I don't want this part of the shape, it will delete them out. So it's kind of like unite and minus fun or punch all in one tool. Hence the name Shape Builder. You're building shapes. So you can use it to create different things. At the moment, we're just creating random shapes. We're not really drawing anything at the moment, but in time we will be. So this is kind of like a way to be able to join different elements together and build more things on top of. So you can add more to that. So we could add some more shapes. So let's add some more things here. And then we could do some more. So we'll select it all again, get the shape builder, and go Alt, and I want to get rid of that bit, but I want to add this bit into it. So there. And likewise, it's changed its color because the blue circle was the last thing we drew, so it's taken the color from that as we've built it. Kind of looks like a train with a spark. I don't know. So yeah, so shape builder tool, really useful, something that you'll use a lot. Okay. So in the next lesson, we're going to look at other ways of drawing which don't involve using shapes.